Hi everyone, I'm Amy and I work with people and their homes. And today I'm going to be speaking to a very special guest about something that happened to her a couple of years ago that really made her reassess her relationship with her possessions. We'll talk about the event and how she managed to get some really positive lessons out of something which could have been quite devastating. Josie lost most of her possessions in the storage facility fire in Croydon, but I'll let her tell you about it in her own words. So let me introduce Josie. Thank you for joining us today, Josie, and sharing your story with us. So do you want to give us a bit of background on the situation, what you were doing at the time, what was going on in your life, and what led to the event that happened?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a complicated story, but the kind of long and short of it is we were moving house. We were moving from a two-bedroom house to a one-bedroom flat. We were all due to move, everything was kind of going smoothly, and then the last minute we had a problem with the purchase of the new flat. Yeah, so we went to look for these different flats. We were constantly looking, but we had nowhere to live, so we had to move into an Airbnb and various other places. I think we stayed on someone's sofa a bit, and it was a bit of a mess for a couple of months. So we took a storage unit it was in Croydon. We had to actually cull possessions in order to make everything fit into it to begin with. So I just read Marie Kondo's book, so I was like full on into the decluttering stuff. I got rid of loads of stuff. I thought, this is it. This is like the minimum that we need. And we left that in the storage unit and went home for Christmas, back to stay with family. And over, I think it was New Year's Eve actually, it happened. And basically the whole storage unit burnt to the ground. And we lost everything apart from a few bags, the kind of stuff you'd imagine you'd put in the boot of your car to take to your parents for Christmas. That's basically what we had. Some people had like the entire contents of their business in there. They were storing inventory to sell and stuff. And I think that probably is a harder thing. Yeah, you kind of think you're lucky in a way that we did have stuff with us.
I think that's really positive that you can look at it that way, that you can look at other people's situation and be like, that's more damaging than what we lost, even though the things that you lost were very personal possessions, some of them. Did you find that your feelings about it changed over time, sort of from that initial finding out and then sort of maybe going through and remembering what possessions were in there to over time changing how you felt about it?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, I think over time, we keep remembering stuff that we've lost. The immediate stuff you remember when it first happened, like the first thing I remembered was my childhood teddy bear was in there. Andy left some of his photography work in there on hard drives.
Obviously, time's passed, so you're able to talk about it sort of in a very calm way. And I'm sure you didn't feel this way, the day after it happened.
But don't get me wrong, I cried immediately after. But yeah, it's absolutely fine now. I was never as sad about it as I think some people would be, mostly because I think we were kind of lucky, like no one was hurt.
I think that's probably quite a different experience from
massively,
somebody who was in an actual house fire and that has that sort of trauma part of it. But at the same time, because you never saw the things burning, I'd imagine it was a little bit removed in that it's like, oh, we saw this thing on the news and that's our stuff, having to sort of bring that reality back to yourself because you weren't actually there when it happened.
No, definitely. I think it was probably a month or two later we actually went past it because there was no reason to go back. That was kind of the line in the sand. It was like, all that stuff's gone, they can't recover anything, done. Yeah, it was okay. But I definitely now kind of glad it happened. It sounds really weird.
Wow.
But it means like every time, I mean, not for the other people, just in our situation, because it happened the way it did, it means that we kind of started buying the things we wanted, like because we really loved them, because we actually wanted that. And like, we still haven't bought a blender, and you're like, but it has to be the right blender. And so you just don't end up buying it in the end, and actually you live without it. And there's quite a few things like that we've just realized you kind of just don't need. And if you take that long to make a decision and you live without it, you're like, okay, we don't have a blender now.
I think that's so interesting that that you actually get to choose what you bring into your house rather than just having something because you had it for years. And obviously some of those things you would have liked to have still had, but things like the blender, like you said, you don't have it, and you've maybe thought that you'd quite like to have it sometimes, but not enough to be like, I will buy a blender.
So we own 2 plates. I think I remember when you came round for dinner, actually, I think we had to borrow plates from Andy's work because we just didn't have enough, and we still haven't sorted that out.
I think that's great that you can do that, because Andy's work has a bunch of plates that they don't need all the time. And, I think that can work for people, not holding on to, 10 plates just in case those few occasions when you have a dinner party. I think actually that can work really well to just sort of share the same things around, so that not everyone has sort of duplicates in many households.
Definitely. No, I mean, I always like the idea of a sharing economy, sort of thing, where you could have like a communal thing for a block of flats where everyone can come and borrow the lawnmower and the whatever it is that needs borrowing. We've kind of got by, and I think a lot of stuff you can just get by. You think when you go camping how little you can survive on.
Or when you go on a holiday and you have just a suitcase full of things.
No matter how big your baggage, you'll fill it and still not use everything you brought.
Exactly. Yeah.
Things just get out of control. I think it's quite easy. At the time I was running a business from home as well, so I had a whole room full of stock, packaging, loads of different things, and it was just chaos. There was so much stuff that was needed in there, and then if you've got a couple of hobbies thrown in, and then all the normal day-to-day stuff, like in a small house, it doesn't take long before you've suddenly got a house full of stuff. We never had loads and loads and loads of stuff, but I don't think we were as conscious about what we're buying probably than we are now. And I think it's been quite a nice process to just individually choose things that are worth having. We were like, great, let's keep it down to no possessions. But I mean, you do need some stuff.
Yeah.
And then, it's kind of bounced back, and we're kind of at a nice, comfortable level now. But I think one of the hardest things to not get rid of, but like when you're going through and like looking at your possessions, when I was doing it before we moved, the main thing I was finding hard to get rid of was, so-and-so gave me this as a gift. That sort of stuff I'd hung on to, and it had been in random bags or whatever, and you don't want it and you wouldn't put it up in your house, and that kind of went, and it's almost like it's a bit of a relief. It's that guilt that you sometimes attach to these objects that is like, oh well, I've lost control of that now. So
totally, yeah. I think that's a really strong reason why people hold on to so much stuff, because they feel guilty.
You've got to kind of look at why you're feeling the guilt about the object, and all the kind of feelings. If it is because that teddy bear reminds me of my childhood and it's something I've had for that long, that might be an important enough reason to keep something. But I think if the reason is, I'd feel guilty because someone else would judge me, I think that's not a reason to keep something. I'm a bit brutal about it now.
It's the thing of allowing yourself to let something go because you're not ever going to use it. And I think the thought of having it in a box for years and years isn't necessarily any more useful than not having it at all.
No, and it frees up kind of space to I don't know, have things you do want.
Do you find now that if you're given something that you don't particularly like, do you find it easier to part with it, or do you still hold on to things that you don't like?
Probably tend to be quite cutthroat, and they will go to a charity shop.
Would you say that you kind of had minimalist tendencies before the fire, or is it sort of you're thinking about it come from the fire?
I've always aspired to be very more minimalist, and I think I've always been quite careful with possessions. I think ever since I was a kid, we'd always do every year. My mum would kind of, okay, you don't play with these toys, let's donate them, sort of thing. We've never had that kind of attic full of toys from every day of our lives, sort of thing. Because I've kind of always been in that mentality of not keeping stuff for extended amounts of time. I haven't had that many things that build up, but then you do end up attaching to things because, I haven't actually got very many things. So that teddy bear is the only thing I have from my childhood. Therefore, I have to hang on to it. And you don't really, and all the memories are still there, and nothing, I've still got photos of it, and other nice times in my childhood. There's not that object isn't actually the memories are there anyway. So that's quite freeing to know. Yeah, before I would have said no, non-negotiable, I'm hanging on to this. Has to come with me in life because of reasons. I don't know what they were really.
It would have been preferable probably to not have to go through that, but I think that's a really nice sort of realization to come to feel that way, to know that those memories are actually inside you rather than in those objects. I think that a lot of the time people can sort of tie up their identity with their possessions, and they feel that if they let something go, particularly sort of things with information like books. Did you have any feelings like that when you lost any particular things in the fire?
Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, books is not something you bring home to stay with your family over Christmas. So all our books were in there, and also all of our kind of prints and artwork. So I mean, literally, you can see a couple of prints on the wall there. There's like three, and then they're all the books we own now. And that is it's. Or we could have just gone out and replaced like for like all these great books that, I mean, we used to have, well, probably 3 or 4 bookcases. I think you end up, if you like reading and you're interested in things, you accumulate books because they're great. But yeah, we've now only got this many, and we like picked like pictures and frames of family and stuff. We lost those, and we haven't replaced them because they're on your phone.
A lot of the time we can feel that our identity is tied up in these objects, but actually who you are changes all the time. It's really, really fluid. You're still there, your kind of essence of yourself still exists. It's just kind of a nice reminder of human resilience that, you know, at the end of the day, this is you, and those were just some things, and although they held memories, those memories still exist inside you, and
Exactly.
you're able to get on with your life just fine without them.
Yeah, definitely.
So having done like a big sort of almost involuntary declutter of your possessions, what would you say to somebody who is sort of really eager to get going with some decluttering, but is just sort of worried about what it'll mean to them to let go of some of their possessions? Is there any bits of advice you would give people as to what it looks like from the other side?
I suppose start off with the easy stuff that you don't have that emotional attachment to. I mean, don't go straight in and throw away all the pictures of your children. I think that's probably a bit extreme. So I think it's doing it in an order so that you don't have to you don't have to get too stressed about the really difficult stuff, because we couldn't choose about that difficult stuff. And probably given the choice now, yes, I'd still keep my childhood teddy bear probably. Think about, well, once you've kind of done the practical stuff like dinner plates, for example, you don't need 10 unless you have a family of 10. You have less plates, you have to wash up every time, so you never have a pile of washing up. Like there's little things like that will help your life.
So it does kind of change your way of living at the same
Yeah.
time, and probably less, you know, dusting and cleaning, because there are less little bits and bobs that you need to sort of move out the way to tidy.
That's true. I mean, we did use some of our insurance money for a robot vacuum cleaner because we're the responsible adults that we are. So that goes around and does the floor. But there's less stuff for it to go around, so that works. What we did before we moved, and before we moved everything into the boxes, we actually put stuff into boxes before we needed to move to see if we needed to keep the stuff. So we'd like pack them, and then like if we hadn't had to rip open that box to get something out, then we actually opened the box and put things in a charity shop bag and took it. So we'd already done that amount of decluttering.
I think that's a great strategy there. I think it's similar to the thing of when people turn the hangers round the other way and see if they...
Yeah, I do that too still.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And the thing is, we start with that easy practical stuff and then work through to the hard stuff. Once it's almost like it's a bit of a like relief, like it's kind of a weight's been lifted, when you're like, I don't have to deal with any of that stuff anymore. And I knew some of it was like boxes of rubbish that I didn't really need, and you're like, but I don't have to deal with that now. I think photos as well, it doesn't take up any storage to have them on your phone, and that's memories, and it can jog memories in a bit more of a kind of decluttered way, I suppose.
Definitely, yeah. There are lots of people who do photo organisation and like scanning of people's photo albums, and then you just get it back on a little USB or whatever.
That sounds really handy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to make this into like everyone throw everything away and you'll be fine, but it's just a kind of story to show people that, you know, you can get rid of a few things. It's particularly those things that actually aren't that sentimental to you, and your life will be all right.
Better, I'd say. Like, genuinely, it's better because you have less stuff. Is tiring. I don't know why. It definitely feels like it's stuff to sort. It's more stuff to tidy up later and rearrange on a bookshelf or whatever. And I think it's less admin now.
Yeah, that's great.
If people are going to store their things in storage units, so genuinely, I would say make sure they check like what the insurance actually covers. We'd got ours separately, so it did cover a little bit more and cost us less to get. But just make sure you get the insurance, and also make sure you document everything. Just keep the receipt of big items, or if you have it on an email, like save that email, make sure it doesn't get deleted. We had to go through everything we'd ever bought and that we thought was in there, and we had to put it into a spreadsheet, attach receipts. Like, you can't claim on insurance unless you have a receipt for that item. So if it's important, keep the receipt, and then you can claim on insurance for it.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice, I think. And yeah, even if you just scan or take a picture of your receipts and keep them digitally, obviously most storage units are going to be safe, but the best thing you can do, rather than storing your things and paying that money to store it, would be to not have to use the storage unit.
I think for most people, if it has to go somewhere where you can't access it, do you need it?
If you're able to have it outside of your house somewhere that you're not going to get to it, unless it's literally something you'd use once a year. But even then, could you think about maybe renting or borrowing that thing rather than keeping it and paying that money to have it stored and insured?
Because it's expensive, a storage unit as well. That's definitely what we found, was very expensive, especially when they also burn all your possessions at the end of the contract.
That's not an ideal service, is it?
It wasn't great. But no, it's a really expensive way of having stuff you're not using. But I suppose if it had been the same amount of stuff had gone, but it had been able to go to charity shops, or it had been given to someone that wanted it, or recycled, or something positive had happened, it would have felt a bit better. It wouldn't be a sense of loss. It would be, oh, it's gone on to do something else. Yeah, I'd find that easier. But yeah.
Thank you so much for kind of opening up about all of that. I know it's a really personal thing that happened to you, and appreciate you sharing your experiences. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, it's all good. Didn't need any of it.
So I really hope you found that interesting. I want to say a huge thank you to Josie for sharing her story with us. I'm so inspired by how she took what could have been a really upsetting event and made it into an opportunity for a positive new start. Thank you for watching. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram for more videos coming up. Bye!